Okay, get this. The womb defines what the black smudge in our passport looks like. I mean, I just absolutely love that quote from the Journal of Forensic Dental Sciences. It's incredibly poetic, right? Just think about it for a second. The ultimate defining symbol of your adult identity, that tiny inked smudge that literally lets you cross global borders or, unlocks your smartphone and can even place a suspect at a crime scene. All of that is entirely decided before you even take your very first breath.
So, welcome to this explainer. I am genuinely so excited to take you on this journey today because we're exploring the biological mystery of fingerprints. We're going to trace a path from those old-school standard ink-stained police pads of the 19th century all the way down into the absolute marvels of mathematical biology and embryonic development. You probably think you know everything there is to know about the ridges on your fingertips, but trust me on this, the science hiding just beneath the surface is absolutely mind-blowing.
Here's our quick roadmap for today. Number 1, the ultimate identity marker. 2, anatomy of a fingerprint. 3, the embryonic cold case. And 4, the really cool part, the Turing pattern breakthrough.
All right, let's jump right into section 1, the ultimate identity marker.
For over 2,000 years, humanity kind of already knew that our fingerprints were uniquely ours. But it wasn't really until the late 1960s that we started to harness this on a massive scale. Picture this. It's 1969. The FBI is literally drowning in physical fingerprint cards. I mean, the manual classification process is taking thousands upon thousands of man-hours, and it's just becoming totally overwhelming. So they push for automation, and it worked. By 1975, we get the first prototype capacitive fingerprint scanners. Fast forward a bit to 1981, and boom, 5 separate automated fingerprint identification systems, or AFIS, are deployed. But here's the catch. They couldn't actually talk to each other. It took all the way until 1999 for the integrated system, IAFIS, to become fully operational, finally creating this massive interconnected digital database. But wait, to actually automate all of this, computers needed to know exactly what they were even looking for.
Which brings us right to section 2, anatomy of a fingerprint.
Now, we are going to zoom way in from those massive global databases right down to the granular level of your own hands. Seriously, look at your fingers right now. Just hold them up. Chances are you're looking at a loop pattern because that makes up about 60 to 65% of all fingerprints. Or, you might see a roughly circular whorl, which is about 30 to 35%. But check this out. Notice how incredibly rare the arch pattern is. Only about 5% of fingerprints have this simple rolling hill shape without any backward turn. But here's the thing. To a computer algorithm, these overall macro patterns, they're really just the starting line.
To actually identify you specifically, the system scans for something called Galton points, or minutiae. Sir Francis Galton basically gave us the entire foundation for modern automation by defining these specific, minute defects and characteristics hidden inside our friction ridges. See, a fingerprint isn't just a set of neat, parallel lines. It's way more like a chaotic landscape. These minutiae, which are the exact precise coordinates of where ridges end or split or enclose, are the specific details that those FBI algorithms extract to confidently say, yep, we have a match.
And this visual brilliantly illustrates exactly what those Galton points look like on actual skin. You can clearly see the fork over there where a single ridge splits into 2. Or look at the island, which is just this tiny, isolated little dot of a ridge. And then there's the enclosure where a ridge splits apart and then completely merges back together. So when you press your thumb on your smartphone screen, the sensor isn't just taking a nice little photograph. It's literally mapping out the intricate spatial relationships between these exact tiny anomalies.
All right, let's move into section 3, the embryonic cold case.
So, okay, we know how to classify fingerprints for high-tech security, but how on earth do they actually form in the womb in such a chaotic yet permanently structured way? Well, if we want to solve this biological cold case, we have to look at the timeline of human development. At just the 7th week of intrauteral life, these temporary elevations begin forming on the fingertips. Then, between the 10th and 16th week, primary ridges start to fold deep inside the basal layer of the dermis, and by the 24th week of pregnancy, that secondary ridge formation is completely finished. The configuration of your unique ridge system is permanently locked in for the rest of your life. It is never going to change.
Now, the real key to this early development lies in these ephemeral, really temporary structures called volar pads. You can see them here. They pop up on the fingertips, palms, and feet right around that 7th week. They basically look like raised little round hillocks.
And the absolutely astonishing thing here is that the specific shape, size, and location of these temporary pads completely dictate where your unique whorls, loops, and arches will eventually emerge. They act as this crucial foundation, and then, right around the 10th week, they just disappear.
Which, as you might guess, leaves us with a massive biological whodunit. Science observed this timeline, sure, but for over a century, nobody could definitively prove the exact biological mechanism behind the transformation. What exactly is turning the smooth skin of a disappearing temporary pad into a permanent, highly complex ridged pattern packed with loops, whorls, and minutiae?
Well, over the decades, researchers lined up a few prime suspects. First up, we had the buckling hypothesis back in the 1920s. This suggested that basal cells rapidly multiply, compress, and basically mechanically buckle under stress, folding into ridges. Then, in the 1970s, came the nerve hypothesis, which argued that these hexagonal growth cones of nerve fibers were creating a grid that shaped the ridges. And finally, the fibroblast hypothesis proposed that tensile stresses from connective tissues were just physically pulling the skin into patterns. Now, they all made logical sense, right? But the problem was, none of them could be fully proven. They were really just educated guesses attempting to explain the physical forces at play.
And that brings us to the grand finale, Section 4, the Turing pattern breakthrough.
Just recently, in 2023, there was this massive breakthrough published in the prestigious journal Cell that finally, officially identified the real culprit. We used to assume it was just mechanical physical stress, the skin literally buckling and folding under pressure. Actually, scratch that, it's way more complex. This study proved that fingerprint patterning is actually driven by a Turing reaction diffusion system. Named after the legendary mathematician Alan Turing, this is a dynamic, mathematically driven chemical signaling system. So it's not just physical pushing and pulling at all. It's this incredibly intricate molecular dance happening right beneath the surface of the skin.
Here are the true mechanics that the study uncovered, and this is where it gets wild. First off, it turns out our fingerprint ridges are actually epithelial structures trying to become hair follicles. They undergo what's called a truncated hair follicle developmental program. Basically, the body starts to grow a hair, but then abruptly stops halfway through. This whole process is driven by the dynamic signaling of two opposing chemical pathways, WNT, which stimulates growth, and BMP, which actively inhibits it. I want you to think of these chemicals spreading out like colliding waves in a pond from different starting points on your fingers. As these invisible waves of WNT and BMP ripple outward and crash into one another across the complicated anatomy of the fetal finger, they literally freeze into place, creating the unending variations of loops, whorls, and arches that we have today.
So, to sum it all up, your fingerprint is essentially an aborted hair follicle program guided by colliding chemical waves, all mapped out by a mathematical equation developed by Alan Turing. I mean, come on, that is absolutely brilliant. So, I want to leave you with this one final kind of provocative thought. If simple, dynamic chemical waves colliding in the womb can create the endless, completely unique variation in our fingerprints, what other biological mysteries are out there, just waiting to be solved by viewing human development, not simply as biology, but as a beautiful mathematical system? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. And hey, the next time you look down at your hands, I really hope you see the incredible, dynamic math hiding right at your fingertips.